Susie Homesteader of the Rockies, and welcome to the Susie Homesteader channel. And today we're going to talk about greenhouses and what kinds of greenhouses there are and how to set them up and what to put in them. So I'm going to start today with just talking about the kind of plants that I like to use in my greenhouse. And you know, there's a big difference between annuals and perennials, and depending on where you live and the zone that you live in. You know, your perennials are the plants that are going to survive all year long, and your annuals are the ones that are only going to live through the growing season. So what I like to do in my greenhouse is do my annuals in the greenhouse, and then I have to choose perennials that will survive a Zone 5 winter out here in the Rockies. And sometimes I'll also start with some of my perennials, such as these Quinault strawberries, in my greenhouse just to get them started. And then at the end of the growing season, after they've kind of been a little bit more established in my greenhouse, I will put them outside in the fall, and then they'll make a comeback in the spring, as long as they're perennials. So that's one other thing I do like to do sometimes in my greenhouse, but for the most part, I do all the annuals, which are also edible, and they're vegetables and herbs and just about anything else that will survive the greenhouse environment. And a couple of ways you can start in your greenhouse. You can either start with a seed. This is just a sunflower seed, which I actually plant behind my greenhouse just so the deer can't get them, but it's still enclosed in an enclosed area. But you can certainly start your plants from seed, and sunflowers are one of the absolute easiest plants to start from seed. Or you can start them in kind of more like a bulb idea, where it's almost just like, you know, an iris or a lily bulb, but these are onion bulbs, which we're also going to plant, 2 different kinds. Or you can actually start your plants that have already been started for you, which I like to do because that gives you a little jump start on your growing season. So 3 different ways to start your plants: seed, a bulb style, or an actual potted plant. And of course you can get these in much bigger sizes as well, and that will, if you've already, you know, bought a bigger version of this, that will expedite your growing process even faster in your greenhouse. So a couple different ways to start your plants. And then the way that I set up my environment for the actual plant locations was by filling up some old troughs that a couple of ranchers were giving away because they had holes in the base and they couldn't use them for water anymore. So I gathered a bunch of my old troughs and any other troughs that I could find that anybody wanted to give away, and went down to the bottom of them and actually drilled more holes in them just so I had better drainage, and used those for my, and actually I even used a trash can, an old metal trash can, which I like to use just because I like the metal better than wood, because it does survive all the heat and the humidity better. But again, you just have to drill some holes in the bottoms of all of these. And the only disadvantage to having plant potters or planters this large is just that you have to use a lot of dirt to fill them up. So what I did is I just had like a whole dump truck full of a good dark topsoil delivered. And about a third of the bottom of this is more pea gravel. So again, I have more drainage on top of the holes that I drilled as well. And then filled up the rest with, just like I said, a pretty decent topsoil. And then about the last third of this, or quarter of this, I used an actual potting soil. So basically my materials just became a better and better quality as I went up. So again, the top layer, even having a little compost on the very top, is where you want to wind up, because these are very big containers. So unless you're using smaller containers, you just don't have to use that much materials. And then after I got these all filled, I did put in some like almost like a wire cage, kind of a support system, In particular, for certain plants like tomatoes that get really, really tall, and you might want to stake or have some kind of a support to keep them from falling over. So the easiest way that I figured out how to do that was just by getting some rebar or some metal stakes or just anything that you can find to just keep your wire from moving around. And then this was just some orchard or tree wire you can pick up at a hardware store, any kind of a wire, and then just formed kind of like these little support cages for the plants themselves. And especially if you have plants that are growing in like a vine, like cucumbers or any kind of a vine plant that needs almost like a trellis. So that works ideal for that. And then besides having your little cage supports and your troughs filled with all your materials, you're also going to want to have some shelving. And this kind of shelving, which I think was the good old Costco metal baker's shelving or something, but anyway, metal again. This was twice the height, but I just separated the two so that they're lower. And this is perfect for just some of your smaller pots or planters or whatever it is you're going to use for growing whatever it is you have. So these are just some old enamelware bowls that I found at a thrift store that probably had cracks in them as well. And these are perfect because, again, even if it's got cracks or dents, you're going to go back in and drill holes in the bottom anyway for drainage. So don't worry about finding things that have holes in them because that's what you're going to wind up with anyway. And then these are just like some buckets, some galvanized buckets that I like to use again because it's not wood and they don't rust and they last forever. And, stuff like pottery or ceramics. These are strawberry pots that I just bought at a nursery, but they survive the heat really well too. And that's just another way to grow strawberries or herbs or anything else you want. But lots and lots of ideas for what to grow your plants in. And you can come up with all kinds of fun little creative ideas. But your best choice is really metal, if you can. And just that way you don't have problems with wood getting moldy or falling apart. And even some of the ceramics in the terracotta pots, if you keep those in a greenhouse long enough, they'll start to crack from the heat. So stick to metal, anything that you can find. And again, you may just have to drill some holes into the bottom of it. So there's a couple of ideas for how to set up the inside of your greenhouse. A couple other things you want to consider is having some artificial light, just in case you have a lot of cloudy days or just a real rainy season and you're not getting enough sunlight. So you could do 2 to 3 times that amount of light if you had to. And again, those are just fluorescent lights with some grow bulbs in them. And then of course you want to have like a fan for some really hot days. And if your greenhouse is constructed so that you have automatic vents that will actually open some of the panels when it gets either too hot or too cold, that is the ideal thing to have. And there are days where you're still going to want to turn your fan on despite having those vents. But this greenhouse in particular I liked because it was in a kit. They also give you panels like on your north-facing side of your greenhouse that are insulated, or maybe have like a thicker plastic or a kind of a visqueen material that they're using in each panel. So the way they set this one up is pretty much you're assembling the entire thing by panels. So another great choice that they give you on this kind of a paneling style greenhouse is to give you doors that are removable. So this one right here I just kind of have shimmied up against the wall here, but this is something that I'll take off in the summertime or just as soon as the temperatures warm up, or I will put it back on as soon as the temperatures drop. So there's another kind of a option that you have on some of these greenhouses. And then also if you ever decide to extend your greenhouse to twice this size, this would just be your entrance to another section of greenhouse if you choose to make it bigger. So this is about a 10 by 12 greenhouse, which seems to be perfect for me, but you know, if you're starting to get into commercial nurseries or something larger than a hobby, you might want to add on a whole nother section of greenhouse. So I like that idea with this kit, just because you do have the option of expanding this at any time you want. So another thing they'll give you is, you know, your main door with all the hardware and the latches and the kick plates, which is nice because, again, you don't have to try and build doors, and you can leave them open or you can close them again depending on your ventilation. So this kit came with one ventilated panel up on the top there, which is kind of the main one up on the roof, which is usually the first one to open since the heat rises anyway. So that one is usually open quite a bit. And then down here it gives you one, let's say two on the bottom of the greenhouse that, as you can see, are kind of cracked open a hair right now to let some of the heat on the bottom of this escape, and also have some more ventilation and the air flowing through. So lots of great little doodads on this one that I like, that helps with air circulation. And then of course this giant sloped side of the roof would be the one that you'd want facing south. So if you're going to be constructing your own greenhouse, obviously the south side, the most sun exposure you have, would be your largest area, and that's how this one was designed. And that also allows the snow, which is super important in the wintertime, to slide off. And it's also very steep pitch, so again, if you're in a northern climate where you are going to have snow or even just heavy sleet or anything like that that needs to slide off, this is the kind of a pitched roof that you'll need, so that your whatever you have on there, whether it's a kind of like a a clear fiberglass that you can also use, or you could use like a corrugated fiberglass to design your entire greenhouse if you're going to build your own frame, or you can use some material like this, which is kind of like a double paned visqueen. Like pretty much a heavy-duty plastic is what it is. So again, you can see how these were kind of all put together in panels. And it wasn't really that tough. You just had to follow the instructions, and it all worked out perfect. So one of the most important aspects of setting up your greenhouse is obviously the base that you're going to put it on. So in this case, other than leveling out a nice flat pad, which was the most important thing on any building structure, this particular greenhouse kit that I bought, before I did anything, I set up on something called a solar drain. And all that is digging down about 1/2 foot to maybe a foot, if you can, into the dirt before you start setting up your timber frame, which is just going to be your 10 by 12 frame that you can kind of see a little bit here. Is digging down below where you're going to set that frame and lining that base soil with some visqueen, and then putting in maybe 1 or 2 rows of a septic drain, which is basically just a PVC pipe with some holes in it, just some kind of a drain pipe, and then covering that drain pipe up with the other 1/2 foot or more of pea gravel or some kind of a rock. So you'll hear me talk about pea gravel over and over because it's one of my favorite materials to use. But what that does is create, number one, a place for everything to drain, because those drain pipes will go beyond where your frame is going to be set up for your greenhouse in case it does get too wet in here. But most importantly, it traps the heat from the greenhouse in the ground, and it will help to extend your growing season as that heat stays trapped in there as it gets colder and colder towards the end of the year. So after you've got your solar drain dug out and all those materials laid that we just talked about, you'll set down your treated, let's see, I have 6 by 6 timbers to actually set up this greenhouse kit on top of. So, and it's a good idea to maybe let that settle for a few days if you can before you actually put your greenhouse on top. Well, you're going to bolt that down to the actual timbers. So again, before you even get your kit started and put together like I did with all these panels, try and put in a solar drain, which isn't really that hard, and then set your treated timbers, you know, in the frame size that you've bought your kit to match to, on top of that. And then you're ready for the panels and everything else that you need to do to set up your greenhouse. So again, like always, setting Up your base is the most important part. Mine has not shifted at all, and this greenhouse has been here for probably 10-15 years, and I've never had any problems with anything separating. So always start with your base and make sure it's nice and sturdy before you even begin the greenhouse itself. So there's another good tip for you on getting ready to set up. This is just kind of an outside view of a 10 by 12 greenhouse. And ideally, if you could have just some kind of source of power and a source of water close by, that's the best way to do it. I also extended the south wall into kind of a small asparagus garden or anything that really likes the heat. And then, of course, because I have deer and every other possible thing out here that wants to eat all my plants, I had to fence it. So I took an old fence that I had that was a dog run and just extended, as I said, my greenhouse area a little bit, and did kind of the same concept that I did on the inside floor of the greenhouse, where I created kind of like a solar drain and put lots of pea gravel on there. I think I have maybe over a foot of pea gravel as a base, again, to just kind of retain the heat in the ground, and then added some soaker hoses since that was just the easiest way to keep this area wet. So lots of additions you can do on your own to your greenhouse, and also just keep extending it if you need more room. Just keep adding on, just like a house. So another thing I like to use is a shade cloth on this one south wall, and that's usually maybe just like the month of August if it gets really hot here in the Rockies. But if you don't want to invest in a shade cloth and you know somebody that's got an old ripped trampoline cover, grab it, because that works just as good. And I have a couple of those old trampoline covers that I just kind of throw over the top of that if it starts getting too hot in there. So hopefully that gave you some great ideas for how to start your own greenhouse, and whether you do it from scratch or you buy a kit or you have somebody come in and install one for you, it's a great way to extend your growing season. And in this part of the Rockies that I'm in, I only have about 150 days of actual growing time. So this gives me maybe a month to 2 months more. And it also keeps out all the deer and lots of other critters that like to eat all my plants, which is really my biggest obstacle here. So if you have any questions, just come see me at Susie Homesteader of the Rockies. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and we'll have lots more videos for you on outdoor and indoor gardening. So we'll see you there. Bye-bye. So let's get started. Subscribe to the Susie Homesteader channel, and we'll see you there. Bye-bye.